It's 10 years, and have we recovered? I don't know if that's even the right word.
Well, the folks, the families, including those in Delaware who lost loved ones, will never be quite the same. And there's a great Bruce Springsteen CD that you've probably heard time and again called The Rising. And it's just a whole CD of songs that are really a tribute to the families and the people who lost their like beautiful CD, very moving. But every time I listen to it, and probably for other people too, especially those who lost their loved ones, it's a hard loss to sustain. We have gone in here in Delaware this past week. We've seen the returns of the remains of some 30 or so Americans, 22 I think SEALs, and our delegation was there, and a lot of folks were in Dover to receive the remains and to be there to comfort the families who lost, you know, their fathers, their brothers, their husbands, and so forth. And it's almost like a bookend, if you will, the loss of life. You know, 3,000 or so in 9/11, and about 30 in this instance. But the two sort of remind me of each other. They both involve Afghanistan. You know, the story in Afghanistan is it's called the death place of the burial ground of the empires. That's what it's been called for 100 years or more. The Brits used to be there. They held sway for a number of years. They finally got chased out and left. When they left, they created a vacuum. Who filled it? The Soviets. Soviets got in. We worked with actually the Taliban, and they helped fuel insurgencies that came out of Pakistan. Finally chased the Soviets out. Soviets left, created a vacuum. Who filled the vacuum? Well, the Taliban. Al-Qaeda provided refuge from Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda launched 9/11 10 years ago. We came in, chased out Taliban, chased out Al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan, and then we got distracted over in Iraq with Saddam Hussein, took our eye off the ball, created a vacuum. Who came in to fill it again? Well, the Taliban. And now we've gone in again, working with a whole bunch of other NATO allies. We've got about 150,000 troops all told over there, and we're trying to make sure that when we pull out at the end of 2014, that we leave behind a country that can feed itself, defend itself, govern itself. And there's a bit of nation building going on. But I don't want us to leave and then create another vacuum. I want to make sure that when we leave this time that we'll not see Al-Qaeda and the remnants of that other terrorist organizations come in. The real problem with Afghanistan is the country right next door to it, and that's Pakistan. Pakistan has 75 nuclear warheads or so. There are a lot of terrorist groups in that country that would like to get their hands on those warheads. We think Al-Qaeda created mischief operating out of Afghanistan 10 years ago. To let the terrorist groups get a hold of nuclear warheads, loose nukes or whatever, we really would know what trouble would be. So we want to make sure that's prevented.
How is our relationship with Pakistan? It's been rocky for a couple of months.
It's uneasy. You have a government that's not. Well, Jeffersonian democracy, we're not very good at Jeffersonian democracy here after 200 years. But they really are struggling over there.
You voted against the initial extension of the Patriot Act. Where does that stand now? Are we getting safer, or we kind of reached a plateau of security 10 years later?
Well, the Patriot Act was extended. My concern as a member of the Judiciary Committee was that the Judiciary Committee had worked very hard to review some of the challenges, some of the problems, and how the Patriot Act has been used and enforced in the decades since 9/11. And I thought a very reasonable, modest package of reforms, particularly to something called national security letters that were misused in the previous administration, was proposed but not taken up or seriously considered, not debated on the floor, and not considered for amendment. And as I said in a speech on the floor at the time, I support our law enforcement and our counterterrorism folks, the folks who serve us at home and abroad, having all the tools they need. But we shouldn't have the broad sweeping powers in the Patriot Act go without any congressional oversight, without any effective review or amendment, particularly when we are on notice that they have been abused, they have been misapplied in some circumstances. So that was a very tough choice for me. And back to your point about bipartisanship, it was a speech on the floor by Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky about liberty and privacy that moved me towards really thinking seriously about voting against extension if there were no amendments. On the broader question of our security as a nation, we are still engaged vigorously in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have nearly 50,000 troops on the ground in Iraq, and we have nearly 100,000 on the ground in Afghanistan. And we're going to spend more than $130 billion this year in Afghanistan. I am concerned that our strategy in Afghanistan remains nation building. I frankly think the nation we should be building is our own. And I did support a significant drawdown. I think we need to realign our strategy towards counterterrorism. We have made more progress in the last 2 years in capturing and killing the leaders and the foot soldiers of al-Qaeda than at any point in the last decade. And I do think we are getting closer to being safer in the war against international terrorism. But I don't think we can stop being vigilant. I don't think we can stop being engaged in the world. And I frankly think the approach to the conflict in Libya has borne out well so far. We allowed our allies to take the lead in terms of the military engagement, the cost, and the risk. We provided some critical resources in terms of intelligence and logistics and coordination that only the United States possesses. But if we're going to be engaged in making the world a safer place, we can't send American troops everywhere. We can't take the lead in every conflict. We shouldn't, and we can't afford it. But if we want to have our allies in NATO and elsewhere take the lead in critical areas, I'm going to support that, because in the end, I think we are safer when we are part of a muscular multilateralism rather than just going it on our own in every single conflict.
The 10th anniversary of 9/11 and the attacks on New York City and Washington, a lot of the questions people are asking 10 years later, are we safer?
Well, I happen to believe that we're probably safer. One of the things that's been very clear, particularly after killing Osama bin Laden, and some of that, those counterterrorism attacks that we've had through the Navy SEALs and the Rangers and those special forces, is we've taken out a lot of those top leaders in al-Qaeda that you don't hear a lot about in the media. And so effectively we've had quite a bit of success there. Things are winding down in Iraq and Afghanistan, not as quickly as I'd like to see, but we have a lot of trouble spots in other places in the world that are dangerous. And so it is a very dangerous world that we live in. Particularly with Islamic terrorists that are finding safe havens in different countries in Africa, and so we've got to be ever vigilant. And I think this 10-year anniversary will be a reminder of the vulnerabilities that we have that were so evident that day when the Twin Towers were attacked.